All right, so you've really gotten me thinking about early years teaching assistants. All this research, it feels like you're picturing yourself working with the kids already.
It's definitely a field with a lot to offer.
Yeah, and this RoleCatcher guide you sent. It's amazing. Way more than just the usual job description stuff.
Oh, absolutely. RoleCatcher goes way deeper.
So, ready to dive in and see if this pass really clicks for you.
Let's do it. I'm ready to unpack all of this.
Okay, so RoleCatcher starts by talking about early years teaching assistants as this foundational influence, right? Helping little ones blossom during that, like, super important time.
It's amazing how much growth happens in those first few years.
Right. But we both know it's not all about, like, cooing over finger paintings.
Right. Definitely not. Think about when a child, gets phonics for the first time, or they finally solve a tricky puzzle. You're not just there, you're part of that.
And then imagine the lead teacher gets called out for a parent conference or something. Suddenly, you're it.
Exactly. You're managing the classroom, adapting the lesson on the fly, maybe even dealing with a meltdown because someone's goldfish crackers spilled.
See, that's what I mean about going deeper. Anyone can say, be patient. But RoleCatcher actually tells you what those challenges look like day to day. Like, they even had this whole thing on managing different personalities.
Oh, for sure. Every child is so different.
Right. Like, what do you do with a kid who wants to be alone versus the one who's, like, instantly everyone's best friend?
It's about understanding those differences, how they learn, how they interact, and then you can try to create an environment where they all feel seen, which is tough, but also incredibly rewarding when you get it right.
And that's what I think is cool about RoleCatcher. They don't just tell you to get a psychology degree, they connect it.
Yeah.
Like how understanding child development actually helps you plan better activities.
It's one thing to read about Piaget stages in a textbook, but seeing them play out in front of you, it changes everything.
Exactly. It's putting theory into practice,
Yeah.
which for someone like you, I bet is pretty exciting.
Definitely. I learn best by doing.
Me too. And speaking of doing, RoleCatcher had this whole thing about how technology is changing early years education. It's not just crayons and paper anymore.
Yeah. It's amazing how much it's evolved. Tablets, interactive whiteboards, educational apps.
Right. It's like you're not just getting them ready for kindergarten, but for a world that's totally tech-driven.
Exactly. Those skills are crucial now.
Imagine being the teaching assistant who can troubleshoot the tech issue in the middle of a lesson,
Yeah.
or introduce a cool new learning app. You'd be indispensable.
Those skills are gold, for sure,
Yeah.
especially in a field where that used to be totally separate.
Right. It's like your secret weapon.
Yeah.
But okay, hold on. We got to be real too. RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat the job market.
It's true.
There are more and more people going into early childhood, which is great for the kids, but it also means more competition for those jobs.
That's where RoleCatcher's insights are so helpful. They really help you stand out.
So how do you stand out if you're clearly passionate about this?
Well, they go way beyond just listing generic qualifications. They emphasize the importance of transferable skills, things like communication, problem solving, how well you adapt to new situations.
And it's like, yeah, you have the degree, but what LSE can you do?
Exactly. And then they show you how to prove it. Like, remember those interview questions we talked about? The tricky ones.
Yeah. The ones where you can tell if someone just like Googled how to be a teacher 5 minutes before.
Totally. So RoleCatcher says, think about those questions now. Come ready with stories, real examples from your life.
Instead of saying, I'm patient, which, come on, everyone says that, right?
Right. You could be like, when I was a camp counselor, there was this kid who totally lost it because,
Yeah.
make them see it, how you handled it, what you learned.
It's like storytelling, but with a point. You're not just listing facts about yourself, you're showing them who you are as a teacher.
And that's what makes you stand out. Anyone can memorize answers, but a good story.
It sticks with them, right? Okay, but say you nail the interview, got the job, then what? RoleCatcher's big on this not being a dead end, which, knowing you, has got to be a relief.
100%. It's not just about becoming the lead teacher someday, though. That's cool, too. You can actually specialize within being a teaching assistant.
Wait, really? Tell me more about that.
So imagine you become the expert on kids with special needs. Or early language development, that's a huge one. You could even be the mindfulness guru, helping little ones learn to, chill out.
So you become this, like, niche expert, not just assisting, but actually changing how they teach the littles. That's awesome.
Exactly. It keeps things interesting, too, which, let's be real, working with the under 5 set, you kind of need that.
Speaking of keeping it interesting, remember that section on professional development? It wasn't the usual boring stuff.
Right. They got into some really cool ideas.
Like you could shadow someone in a totally different field. Speech therapist, occupational therapist, get a whole new perspective on how kids develop.
I love that. They even suggested, like, doing your own mini research project.
Yeah. See if that new teaching method actually works or how well that behavior strategy does.
It's taking charge of your own growth, which in a field that changes so fast is huge.
Okay, but real talk for a sec. All this passion and learning is great, but what's it actually like, day to day, being an early years teaching assistant? Paint me a picture.
Okay, so imagine this. You walk into a classroom. It's kind of crazy, right? Kids are laughing, yelling. Someone might be like shrieking over a drawing. There's paint everywhere, blocks all over.
Sounds about right.
But here's the thing. Amidst all that chaos, you get to see these amazing aha moments. A kid finally gets a concept, or they build something incredible. You're part of that.
It's those little victories that make it all worthwhile, right?
Exactly. Plus, there's the team. You're working with other passionate people, you bounce ideas off each other, help each other through the tough days.
We're all in it together, battling it out in the trenches of, like, Play-Doh and timeouts.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the classroom, too. RoleCatcher talks about parents, how important it is to have a good relationship there.
Which, let's be honest, can be its own challenge sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But when it works well, everyone benefits, especially the kids.
Okay, so we've covered the good, the tough, the rewarding. But what about the elephant in the room? Salary. We both know early childhood educators, they don't do it for the money.
It's definitely not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Right. RoleCatcher keeps it real about that. It's about passion, making a difference, knowing that the real payoff isn't in your paycheck.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Though it is worth mentioning, salaries do vary a lot. Where you live, experience, all that factors in.
And there's always room to grow, right? Maybe become a lead teacher someday or...
Exactly. But at the end of the day, this field, it's about loving those little humans and wanting to give them the best start.
And that's priceless. Okay, before we move on, I got to ask about those other careers. You know, for someone who loves this age group but maybe isn't sure about being an assistant, RoleCatcher had some interesting ones listed.
Oh, yeah. They went way beyond the obvious, like becoming a lead teacher or going back to school for, like, a master's degree.
Right, like they had a whole thing on being a special educational needs assistant, which totally makes sense with how much inclusion matters these days.
And child psychology. I mean, talk about a fascinating field. Working directly with the kids and their families, figuring out all the crazy ways kids develop.
Oh, and remember this one. Play therapist. Using play to help kids, like, process their emotions and stuff.
So cool. It's amazing how many paths there are.
Right. It just shows you could be passionate about early childhood and have so many options. Okay, but let's zoom out for a sec. Why does all this matter? Like, why is an early years teaching assistant so important in the grand scheme of things?
That's such a good question. We always hear, oh, the early years are crucial, but it's easy to forget how much is actually happening in those little brains.
It's like if you don't build the foundation right, the whole house is going to be wonky, right?
Exactly. And early years teaching assistants, they're right there on the front lines, shaping those early experiences, nurturing those developing minds. They're setting the stage for everything that comes after.
It's not just ABCs and 123s. It's sparking their curiosity, helping them become little learners and explorers.
And they're doing it all while juggling a million things at once. Different personalities, creating a safe space, making sure those tiny humans don't, like, launch themselves off the furniture.
It's a big job.
It is. But thankfully, there are amazing people out there who are up for the challenge.
Speaking of amazing people, I got to ask about this external resources section. Is that just RoleCatcher being fancy? Or is it actually useful?
Oh, it is so useful. It's like they did all the research for you. They have this whole list of organizations, websites. It's amazing.
Give me the highlights.
Okay, so first up, NAEYC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. They're all about making sure every kid gets a good start.
So if you're serious about this field, NAEYC is like required reading.
Pretty much. Then there's 0 to 3, which is all about babies and toddlers, making sure those first 3 years are super strong.
Because it's never too early to start fighting for these kids. Right?
Exactly. And for those who love the nerdy stuff, the research behind it all, RoleCatcher recommends SRCD, the Society for Research in Child Development.
So you can geek out on all the latest studies.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Right. Oh, and we can't forget the Council for Exceptional Children, or CEC. They're all about making sure kids with disabilities get what they need.
Because everyone deserves a chance to learn. It's incredible how much thought RoleCatcher put into this.
It's like they created this whole support system, and it just shows RoleCatcher isn't just about getting you hired.
It's about empowering you to be the best possible advocate for these kids.
Right.
It really is. And you know what else impressed me? How much RoleCatcher cares about. Like you. The person taking this job. They have a whole thing on self-care, which, let's be real.
So important. You can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Exactly. And they're not just saying, go take a bath. They get it. Burnout is real, especially when you're giving so much to these kids.
They had a whole list of burnout signs, feeling drained, cynical, like not even caring anymore, which is scary.
And that's when you know it's bad.
Yeah.
But what I liked is they gave actual advice, like setting boundaries, saying no sometimes, which I know can be hard.
It's so hard, but essential. You got to protect your energy or you're no good to anyone.
Right. And they're big on finding support, too.
Right.
Talking to other teachers, a mentor, even a therapist.
Because everyone needs to vent sometimes. And those tough days, they happen to everyone. No shame in asking for help.
It really does take a village, right? And not just for the kids, for the grown-ups, too. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are you walking away with?
Honestly, even more sure that this field is full of amazing people doing such important work. It's not easy, but man, the rewards are huge.
I'm so with you. And what I love about RoleCatcher is they're honest. They don't pretend it's all sunshine and rainbows, but they give you the tools, the knowledge, the support, even just permission to take care of yourself so you can actually thrive in this crazy, wonderful world.
They set you up for success. Not just to get the job, but to actually be good at it, to love it.
Exactly. So to everyone listening who feels that pull towards early childhood, that urge to make a difference in the lives of these little humans, go for it. It might just be the best decision you ever make. And remember, resources like RoleCatcher, they've got your back.
Because like we said, it takes a village. And we're all in this together.